Simone, what do you think the message is that the vice president is making or made by this decision to bring Walz in? She looked at a number of different candidates from different states that had different strengths and maybe some weaknesses. What does Walz bring to this?
Well, I'll say two things. First, I think the message the vice president is sending is that this was her decision. There were a lot of individuals, I think, who would have, and even folks who were a part of giving recommendations and their thoughts and views to the vice president about who they thought would be a good running mate for her. Some of those folks thought that that was Governor Walz. There were others who thought that those were other individuals. But at the end of the day, picking a running mate is the most important, frankly, and the first presidential level decision that a nominee makes. And with this decision, Vice President Harris has made it quite clear that she is the one in the driver's seat here. This was not a group activity, if you will. I think Governor Walz is a remarkable choice, frankly. He was a former teacher. I also would like to note he is a native Nebraskan, and as a native Nebraskan, we're going to claim Tim Walz every time we see him. I saw him recently and know that we really know where his bread is buttered. But truly, in an election where it comes down to how people are feeling, and do the candidates and the campaigns understand what folks are going through, and do they have a plan to address that for their lives, Governor Walz adds a lot to the ticket. It's my understanding that that was also something that was important to the vice president and part of why she landed on Governor Walz. He and his wife, they went through IVF. His daughter's name is Hope, and he himself has said her name is Hope for a reason, because her literal birth, the conception of her and her birth gave them hope. So that is something a lot of families across the country obviously are dealing with. Obviously, a really strong juxtaposition, if you will, with the Trump-Vance campaign and how they are talking about reproductive freedom and healthcare and the ability IVF and families to make the decisions that they need. So this is, I think, a very compatible choice, and the executive level experience is something also very important. At the end of the day, she is not just picking someone who is going to help her win 270 electoral votes. She is selecting someone that, if she is elected as president of the United States, will be the vice president, someone who she would like to be ready on day one, much like then candidate Biden, now President Biden, talked about and thought about when he picked her as his running mate almost 4 years ago.
Hu-Liang, what do you make of the vice president's choice of Governor Walz to be her running mate? What does Walz bring to the Democratic ticket that maybe others couldn't?
Well, I think what he brings is a lot of great energy, terrific vibe. I mean, he seems happy, Jose. I mean, you think about the contrast with J.D. Vance. You think of J.D. Vance right now, and the word that comes to mind is scolding, right, or angry. And it's the complete opposite with Walz. It's the happy warrior, but somebody who's inclusive, who understands governing. He's going to be a strong partner, I think, an effective partner if Kamala Harris is elected as a governor, as somebody who also can, in the campaign, relate to everyday people. He's able to both, wear a camouflage hunter's jacket and then also talk about the importance of universal school lunches for children. So he has a range that is able to appeal both to the base and also to those voters, those white working class voters that they need to get in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. I think that's why she selected him. On top of that, I think he's in keeping with the cardinal rule of vice presidential politics. Choose somebody who will do no harm. I have confidence that through that vetting process, that's probably what she found. That doesn't mean that everybody else on that list had an issue. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that they vetted him well. And I think what they found was this is a solid choice. This is somebody who's going to really help in the next 3 months and will be an effective governing partner beyond that.
Carlos, I know that you, when you were in the House, served alongside with then Congressman Walz, who I believe when he was in the House had an A+ rating by the NRA, then went to an F rating by the NRA. He certainly has positions that have changed on that issue alone.
That's right, Jose. Tim Walz was someone I knew well in the House. He was someone who was easy to work with, a gentleman, bipartisan, always involved in all the bipartisan deal making. When he left the House, he had to run in a Democratic primary for governor, and I think he probably shifted some of his positions to the left. But clearly what the Harris campaign is going for here is balance. And it presents a contrast to what the Trump campaign tried to do, right? With their choice, it was MAGA ×2, double down on conservative populism. Here, I think the Democratic campaign is recognizing the top of the ticket is a progressive from California. Let's find a moderate Democrat from the center of the country.
Charles, if I could, and we're just watching these live pictures out of St. Paul, Minnesota, where we see that those two cars leaving the governor's house right now, and let's listen and see. It's pretty tinted of them, but you can see that this is one of those official cars with the red and blue lights in the back. This one does not, so there's some waving from inside. And then there's this SUV, and this is live pictures from St. Paul, Minnesota. Looks like the governor has just left. And I'm sorry, Carlos, to interrupt you.
So, yeah, I was just saying, Jose, that I think what Democrats are trying to do is replicate the winning formula from 2020. In 2020, they put forward a candidate in Joe Biden that tried to appeal to the center of the country. Some would say that maybe he didn't govern that way later, but certainly the perception was that Joe Biden was a deal maker, someone who got along with Republicans. That is what Tim Walz is. So it's the same formula as 2020 for Democrats, but inverted. Now the progressive candidate is at the top of the ticket, and the more centrist deal-making candidate is the vice presidential nominee.